"Since you couldn't give us an heir here, take this anniversary gift," my father-in-law said smugly. When I opened the box, divorce papers were inside. I glanced at my husband. He turned his face away. Then my mother-in-law introduced a 25-year-old woman as his new wife. Silently I signed. But then my best friend pulled an envelope from her purse. My father-in-law's face went pale as he read it. Can you believe the sheer audacity? I was sitting there, celebrating what I thought was our second wedding anniversary, surrounded by my closest family and friends, when my monster-in-law announced a special surprise. A surprise that ended with divorce papers in my hands and a new woman, my husband's fiancée, paraded out like a prize. But the real twist? That's when my best friend dropped a bomb that turned their carefully orchestrated cruelty into pure, unadulterated chaos. Let me take you back to that morning. Our second anniversary. I woke before dawn, a giddy buzz of excitement making sleep impossible. 2 years. Timothy and I were celebrating tonight with everyone who mattered. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and padded to the kitchen in bare feet. The house felt different, full of anticipation. Sunlight hadn't even started filtering through the lace curtains, but I could see our wedding photos on the mantel, frozen in that perfect moment, promising forever. Timothy's face radiant with joy, my dress a cloud of hope and dreams. I touched my wedding ring, spinning the warm gold band around my finger like I always did when I needed reassurance. It felt like part of me now, as natural as breathing. Timothy appeared in the kitchen doorway just as I was plating his favorite breakfast. Blueberry pancakes, real maple syrup, crispy turkey bacon, fresh squeezed orange juice. The kitchen smelled like contentment itself. "Happy anniversary," I said softly, expecting him to cross the room and kiss me like he had last year. Instead, he just paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he replied simply. 2 years. Something in his flat tone made me look up, but he'd already turned to the newspaper. The familiar rustle of pages filled the space between us, a sudden, inexplicable barrier. Timothy was always quiet in the mornings, but this silence was different. Heavier. More deliberate. I brushed it off as anniversary nerves. Men handle celebrations differently, right? Where I felt champagne bubbles, he probably felt the weight of expectation. That afternoon, I was at Mason and Sharon's house, transforming their formal dining room for our celebration. Sharon, my mother-in-law, was practically vibrating with excitement. She usually directed my efforts with a mix of criticism and helpful suggestions. But today her smile was wider than I'd ever seen. "Oh, Catherine," she gushed. "Tonight is going to be such a special evening, such a relief, really. We've been anticipating this moment for quite some time." From his leather armchair, Mason, my father-in-law, nodded approvingly. 2 years provides adequate time for evaluation, he intoned, that authoritative voice he used for family pronouncements. "Tonight, we celebrate making necessary decisions." Their words felt warm, inclusive, as if they were finally welcoming me fully into their family circle. I'd worked so desperately for their acceptance, enduring countless dinners with subtle surgical criticisms, holidays with pointed questions about grandchildren, social events where I felt like I was constantly auditioning for a role I thought I'd earned through marriage. The dining room shimmered under our combined efforts. Roses and baby's breath filled every surface, crystal glasses caught the light, and the good china gleamed. As guests arrived, a familiar surge of pride swelled in me. Everything was going according to plan. Yet, as the evening wore on, I noticed subtle undercurrents. Guests offered hollow congratulations, their embraces lasting a moment too long, like goodbyes. Conversations quieted when I approached. Meaningful glances were exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. My Aunt Patricia pulled me aside, her weathered hands clasping mine. "Catherine dear, you look rather pale. Are you feeling well?" I brushed it off as nerves, but she studied my face with that penetrating gaze she perfected as a high school principal. "If you ever need anything, Catherine, anything at all, you know you can call me." Her words carried an undertone I couldn't decipher. An offer of help for problems I didn't know I had. Before I could ask, Timothy appeared, a forced smile on his face, and guided me away. Throughout the cocktail hour, Timothy kept a careful physical distance, avoiding the casual touches and shared glances that usually defined us in public. When asked about our marriage or future plans, he gave vague responses, quickly redirecting the conversation. He acted like someone steeling himself for an unpleasant but necessary task. Dinner unfolded with formal elegance, each course demonstrating refined taste. Conversation flowed smoothly, touching on safe topics, carefully avoiding anything personal. I should have been basking in my successful planning, but instead I studied faces, searching for clues about the strange undercurrents. Everyone seemed to be performing, following a script I hadn't received. As dessert was served, Sharon rose. My stomach clenched. "We have such a wonderful surprise for you, Catherine," she announced, her timing perfectly calculated to catch me off guard. Mason pushed back his chair, commanding attention. In that moment, surrounded by the crystal and china I'd arranged, it finally hit me. I wasn't the host of this celebration. I was its target. The applause died down, but the tension in the room remained thick as fog. I forced a smile, my hands trembling as I reached for my water glass. Something fundamental had shifted. The faces around the table held expressions I couldn't decipher. Anticipation mixed with something uncomfortably like pity. But this unease wasn't my first warning. The signs had been accumulating for weeks. Hairline cracks in a foundation I'd chosen to ignore. 3 weeks earlier, while organizing tax documents, I found it. A cell phone statement not on our family plan. Same wireless company, wrong account number. My hands shook as I studied the itemized charges. Hundreds of texts and calls to a number I'd never seen. The dates and times told a story that made my stomach clench. Late-night conversations when Timothy claimed to be sleeping beside me. Afternoon calls during work when he was supposedly unreachable. Weekend texts exchanged while he sat in our living room, claiming to be checking emails. The frequency had exploded over 3 months. Someone in his life had become important enough for this level of attention, this level of secrecy. When Timothy came home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen. The phone bills spread across the counter like evidence. Can you explain this? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Timothy's face cycled through confusion, recognition, guilt, and then defensive anger. You went through my personal papers. They were mixed in with our tax documents. I shot back. I wasn't snooping. I was organizing. That's work-related, he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. My boss requires a separate line for confidential projects. Your boss requires you to text at midnight? His jaw tightened. You're being paranoid, Catherine. This kind of suspicious behavior is exactly why our marriage has problems. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Our marriage had problems. This was news to me. What problems, Timothy? I don't understand. His voice rose, frustration building. Everything has to be about you, doesn't it? You question everything I do, everywhere I go, everyone I talk to. It's suffocating. He grabbed his keys. I need air. I need space. I need to not be interrogated in my own home. The front door slammed with finality, leaving me alone with the phone bill and the crushing realization that my husband was keeping secrets that required professional-level deception. 2 days later, a grocery store encounter added another piece to the unsettling puzzle. I was selecting vegetables when I noticed a young woman staring at me with uncomfortable intensity. She was beautiful, effortlessly so, making me suddenly self-conscious about my own appearance. My hair, my clothes. You must be Catherine, she said, approaching with obvious nervousness. I'm Judith. I work with Timothy. He mentions you sometimes. Timothy rarely discussed colleagues, and he'd certainly never mentioned a Judith. Her nervousness seemed disproportionate. She kept glancing around as if expecting to be caught. He told me about your anniversary party, she continued. It sounds lovely. This was particularly odd. Timothy had been reluctant to discuss our celebration, claiming he preferred private moments. Why would he share details with a coworker he never mentioned? How thoughtful of him to talk about our marriage at work, I said carefully, studying her face. Judith's smile faltered. Oh, he doesn't really discuss your marriage. He talks about other things. Personal things. She paused, realizing she'd said too much. I should go. It was nice meeting you, Catherine. She hurried toward the exit, leaving me in the produce section, questions multiplying like cancer cells. Personal things? With a beautiful young coworker? The weekly dinner at Mason and Sharon's that Sunday provided another layer of understanding. What had felt like mild criticism now revealed itself as systematic evaluation. A performance review I was apparently failing. Margaret's daughter just had the most beautiful baby, Sharon announced, glancing meaningfully at my flat stomach. Grandchildren bring such joy. Everyone our age is enjoying the fruits of successful marriages. Mason joined the assault. Successful marriages typically produce children within the first year. It demonstrates compatibility, shared values, biological fitness. I tried to redirect, but Sharon persisted, her words carefully chosen to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. This wasn't outright cruelty. It was strategic demoralization. Timothy sat through it all in complete silence, neither defending me nor redirecting the conversation. His passive participation in my humiliation was perhaps more devastating than his parents' act of cruelty. I excused myself to the bathroom, pressing my back against the door, crying silently. Through the thin walls, I heard them discussing my inadequacies. 2 years should have been adequate time, Mason was saying. Perhaps the problem is more fundamental, Sharon replied. Timothy's voice was too quiet to distinguish, but his tone suggested agreement. When I returned, the conversation had shifted, but the damage was done. I understood. My position in this family was conditional, probationary, subject to metrics I was failing. That Thursday evening my mother called. Her voice carried that worry only mothers can perfectly calibrate to pierce through your defenses. Catherine, honey, you sound so tired. Are you sleeping enough? Timothy missed Easter. Christmas felt strained. Is everything all right between you two? The question hung in the air like smoke. How could I explain that my husband was becoming a stranger? That his family treated me like a disappointing employee? That I was discovering layers of deception? We're fine, Mom. Just the normal adjustments. You know you can tell me anything, she said, her voice firm. If you need help, if you need to come home, if you need anything at all. The offer of refuge was both comforting and terrifying. It meant she saw what I was desperately trying to hide. My perfect marriage was crumbling, and I was too proud, too frightened to ask for help. I'll visit soon, I promised, avoiding her perceptive questions. I love you, sweetheart. Remember that you deserve to be happy. After she hung up, I stood in my empty kitchen holding the phone, wondering when happiness had become something I had to remember I deserved, rather than something I naturally expected. Now, sitting at this anniversary dinner with Mason preparing his announcement, I realized all those warning signs had been leading to this. The phone calls, the beautiful coworker, the family's impatience, my mother's worried questions. All of it building toward whatever surprise awaited me. Mason cleared his throat with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. But before he could begin, my mind drifted back to a medical appointment just 48 hours earlier. Erica, my best friend, had insisted on driving me to Dr. Patterson's office. Her enthusiasm for definitive answers was both comforting and overwhelming. The fertility clinic, with its sterile corridors lined with motivational posters of smiling mothers and chubby babies. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 years of failure documented on those forms. Just think, Erica had whispered. By Thursday, we might have the answer you've been hoping for. Dr. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s, had asked, "Are you happy in your marriage, Catherine?" The question hung like an accusation. Erica squeezed my hand, and I realized my hesitation had revealed more than any words. Yes, I'd finally replied, but even I could hear the uncertainty. The blood draw felt like my last hope being extracted. Each vial another chance for my body to redeem itself. Results by Wednesday, Dr. Patterson had said. We'll call. Sitting here, I wondered if those results might arrive in time to change whatever announcement Mason was preparing. Perhaps positive news could salvage this increasingly precarious marriage. 3 nights after that medical appointment, a confrontation with Timothy had shattered what remained of my illusions. I'd approached him in our bedroom, armed with fertility brochures, desperate hope that medical intervention might bridge the chasm between us. Timothy, I've been thinking about what Dr. Patterson said. There are options we haven't explored yet. His response was immediate, devastating in its coldness. Maybe we're not meant to have children together, Catherine. Maybe this is our bodies telling us something we should listen to. The words struck me like physical blows. What are you saying? I'm saying that perhaps this marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Perhaps we've been trying to force something that was never meant to work. I stared at this stranger who wore my husband's face but spoke with the voice of someone who had already emotionally departed. Is there someone else, Timothy? His silence stretched a guilty verdict. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat and final. I think I should sleep in the guest room tonight. We both need space to think. That night marked the beginning of a new phase. Living as strangers, sharing a house, maintaining appearances, but privately acknowledging something fundamental had broken. The true feelings of Mason and Sharon came to light during a routine family gathering that Sunday. I'd volunteered to help Sharon with dessert, a gesture that once felt like daughterly devotion, but now felt like desperate performance art. The pantry just off the dining room had thin walls. I was reaching for crystal cake plates when I heard my name spoken with undisguised contempt. Catherine has proven herself incapable of fulfilling the most basic requirement of marriage, Sharon was saying to Mason. 2 years without even a miscarriage to show for it. At her age, if it was going to happen naturally, it would have happened by now. The girl is defective, Mason replied with the casual cruelty of someone discussing faulty merchandise. Timothy deserves better. A wife who can actually produce children instead of making excuses. My hands froze on the serving dishes. They discussed my appearance, my personality, my worthiness as a family member with detached analysis. Each word carved away another piece of my self-worth, leaving me hollow and shaking. We need to find Timothy a more suitable wife, Sharon concluded. Someone younger, proven fertile, from a better family background. When I finally emerged, my hands trembled so violently the crystal rattled. Sharon looked up. Catherine dear, you look pale. Are you feeling well? The concern in her voice felt like mockery. These people who smiled across family dinner tables were actively plotting the destruction of my marriage. The family I tried so desperately to please had already decided I was unworthy. Despite this growing evidence of betrayal and rejection, I threw myself into planning our anniversary celebration with manic determination. The party became my last desperate attempt to prove my worth, to demonstrate I was valuable enough to keep. I spent hours selecting flowers, choosing a menu to impress even Sharon, crafting elegant invitations. Each decision felt weighted with significance, as if the success of the party might save a marriage clearly beyond salvaging. The irony was suffocating. I was planning a celebration of a relationship that had become a source of daily humiliation. I was planning my own wake. Now, as Mason prepared to deliver his announcement, I realized all my careful preparations had been for this. Not a celebration, but a carefully orchestrated ending that I had unknowingly helped to stage. Mason's throat-clearing echoed, and in that stretched moment, I became acutely aware of how this entire day had felt like a performance where everyone but me had received the script in advance. The morning had started with Mason arriving early, his arms laden with flowers and wine I hadn't requested. His greeting was effusive, unnatural, his embrace too long, his eyes holding mine with a creepy intensity. "Catherine, my dear daughter-in-law," he'd said, the endearment theatrical. "Tonight will be such a special evening, such a memorable evening. I hope you are prepared for how special it will be." The repetition of special felt like a warning disguised as enthusiasm. Sharon had been equally strange, fluttering around my kitchen, offering suggestions that were really commands. "You should wear your blue dress tonight, Catherine. Very appropriate for the occasion." When had she ever cared about my clothing choices? Timothy had avoided me all day, claiming nervousness, but his demeanor screamed guilt. He moved like a man preparing for an execution, checking his watch, jumping every time the phone rang. When I tried to talk about party details, his responses were monosyllabic. "Timothy, are you feeling well? You seem tense." He looked at me then, an expression I couldn't decipher. Pain, regret, perhaps? "I'm fine, Catherine. Just want everything to go smoothly." But nothing about his behavior suggested he wanted a smooth evening. Erica's arrival had provided the first genuine warmth all day. She swept into the house, her excitement palpable, almost manic, clutching her purse with protective intensity. "Catherine," she'd exclaimed, embracing me fiercely. I can barely contain myself. "This is going to be the best anniversary party ever." I pulled back, studying the bright flush in her cheeks, her sparkling eyes. "Erica, you look like you're about to burst. What's gotten into you? I told you I have the perfect gift for you. The timing is going to be absolutely perfect. Life-changing, Catherine. This gift is going to change everything." She kept touching her purse, her fingers tracing an envelope. "You're making me nervous with all this mystery," I said, but her enthusiasm was infectious. For the first time all day, a flutter of genuine hope. "Trust me," she whispered, squeezing my hands. "When the moment is right, when it will have maximum impact, I will give you something that will make everyone in this room understand just how special you are." Her presence anchored me. While Timothy's family made me feel like an outsider performing for their approval, Erica made me feel seen and valued for who I was. As guests arrived, the social dynamics felt immediately wrong. Hollow congratulations, embraces like condolences. My cousin Michael, usually boisterous, was subdued, avoiding eye contact. "Congratulations, Catherine. I hope tonight brings you everything you deserve." Everything I deserved? Why did that sound less like a blessing and more like a threat? Mrs. Henderson from down the street, normally a cheerful gossip, offered unusually elaborate, rehearsed compliments. "Catherine dear, you look absolutely radiant tonight. So brave. So dignified. I've always admired your strength." Asterisk brave? Dignified? Asterisk these weren't anniversary words. They were words for people facing adversity with grace. I caught glimpses of meaningful exchanges between guests. Raised eyebrows, subtle nods, whispered conversations that abruptly ceased when I approached. The party felt charged with information everyone possessed except me. Aunt Patricia cornered me again, her hands gripping mine. "Catherine, sweetheart, you look terribly pale. Are you feeling well?" "I'm fine, Aunt Patricia. Just excited." She studied me. "If you ever need anything at all, you have my number. Promise me you'll call if you need help." Help with what? What crisis were they all anticipating? Timothy's behavior confirmed my growing suspicion. He drank more heavily than I'd ever seen him, making multiple trips to the bar. He maintained distance, avoided my gaze. When asked about our future, he gave vague, redirected answers. He checked his watch obsessively. His whispered conversations with Mason always ended abruptly when I approached, carrying an urgency that clenched my stomach. "Timothy," I whispered during a brief moment alone in the kitchen. "What is wrong with you tonight? You're acting like you're attending a funeral." He looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold apologies for crimes not yet committed. "Catherine, I just want you to know that none of this was personal. None of this was because you're not a good person. None of what was not personal, Timothy. You're scaring me." But before he could respond, Sharon appeared, announcing dinner was ready. Now, as Mason prepared his announcement, I realized every strange interaction, every meaningful glance, every whispered conversation, had been leading to this. The dessert sat untouched before me as the weight of the impending revelation pressed down like a gathering storm. The storm broke with Mason's next words. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," he began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone delivering a verdict. "We have gathered tonight not just to mark Catherine and Timothy's second anniversary, but to address some very important family matters." A chill ran down my spine. The room fell utterly silent. Even the soft classical music faded, leaving only the thunder of my own heartbeat. Mason reached into his jacket pocket with theatrical precision, producing an envelope, official and ominous in the candlelight. He held it high like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Marriage," he continued, his gaze settling on me with uncomfortable intensity, is an institution with specific purposes. When those purposes are not fulfilled after a reasonable period of time, difficult decisions must be made for the good of all involved parties. My mouth went dry. The dessert fork trembled in my hand as I set it down with a soft clink that echoed through the silent room. "Catherine, my dear," Mason said, his endearment a blade wrapped in silk, "you have been part of our family for exactly 2 years. That represents adequate time to evaluate the success of this union and make necessary adjustments for the future." Timothy stood frozen beside his father, his face pale as parchment, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond my shoulder. He looked like a man before a firing squad. Except he wasn't the one about to be executed. "Since you could not provide us with an heir," Mason continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Here, take this anniversary gift." The envelope materialized before me, held steady by his confident hand. Around the table, sharp intakes of breath, morbid fascination. My hand shook as I accepted it. The paper felt expensive, substantial, weighted with an importance I was only beginning to understand. The return address was embossed with the logo of a law firm I didn't recognize. "Open it, Catherine," Sharon urged from across the table, her voice bright with barely contained excitement. "We're all so eager to see your reaction." The envelope grew heavier in my trembling hands. Part of me wanted to set it down unopened, to preserve for just a few more moments the illusion that my life wasn't about to change irrevocably. But 45 pairs of eyes were watching me. I tore open the seal. The legal documents inside were crisp, formal, their official letterhead making everything terrifyingly real. "Petition for dissolution of marriage," I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper. The formal language couldn't disguise the brutal reality. Timothy had met with attorneys. He had filed paperwork. He had planned my abandonment with the same methodical precision other couples used to plan vacations. The room began to spin. Our marriage, reduced to a contractual arrangement, being terminated due to irreconcilable differences stemming from the respondent's failure to conceive children within a reasonable time frame. "Timothy." I looked up at my husband, desperate for some sign that this was an elaborate, cruel joke, that he would step forward and explain. Instead, he remained frozen beside his father. His silence spoke louder than any confession. The man I'd shared a bed with for 2 years, the man whose breakfast I'd prepared that morning, couldn't even meet my eyes as I held the legal documentation of his betrayal. "There's more, Catherine," Sharon announced with the enthusiasm of someone unveiling the second act. "We'd like you to meet someone very special." A young woman stepped forward from the dining room doorway. I recognized her immediately, Judith from the grocery store. But tonight she wasn't nervous. Tonight she was dressed in a blue silk dress, her hair styled perfectly. "Catherine," Sharon continued with barely concealed glee, "I'd like you to meet Judith, Timothy's fiancée. They plan to marry as soon as the divorce is finalized." The words hit me like physical blows. Fiancée. They were already engaged while I was still legally married to him. The betrayal had layers I was only beginning to understand. I looked at Judith now, noting details I'd missed at the grocery store. She was wearing delicate pearl drop earrings that I suddenly recognized as belonging to Timothy's grandmother. Family heirlooms promised to me, now adorning my replacement. "We wanted you to meet her properly," Mason explained, his tone like a business transaction, "so there would be no confusion about the arrangements moving forward. Judith comes from an excellent family, and she has already proven her ability to conceive." Proven her ability to conceive. The words echoed in my mind. She wasn't just Timothy's mistress, she was his upgrade, carefully selected and evaluated for her reproductive potential. "The papers just need your signature, Catherine," Timothy finally spoke, his voice strained. "I've already signed them. We can make this easy for everyone." Easy for everyone. As if there was an easy way to have your marriage dissolved in front of an audience of family and friends. As if there was an easy way to discover your husband had been planning your replacement while you were arranging flowers for your anniversary. I looked down at the divorce papers again, at the yellow sticky note where my signature was required. The pen Mason offered felt impossibly heavy, weighted with finality. Around the table, guests shifted, uncomfortable, powerless. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched with morbid fascination. "Catherine," Erica's voice cut through the silence. I looked up to see my best friend standing near the living room entrance, her face white with shock and fury. "Don't sign anything." Not yet. But I was beyond thinking clearly. The humiliation was complete, the betrayal absolute. These people who had pretended to care had systematically orchestrated my destruction, and they were doing it in front of everyone I knew. Through tears that blurred the legal documents, I signed my name. The pen scratched, each letter sealing my fate, ending my marriage in the most public, humiliating way possible. The room erupted in relieved cheers and congratulations for Timothy, as if my pain was the price of admission to their celebration. But the cheers died instantly when Erica stepped forward. Her face transformed from shock into something far more dangerous. Cold, calculated fury. The earlier excitement I'd noticed in her demeanor was still there, But now I understood its true nature. She hadn't been excited about my marriage. She had been excited about what she was carrying in that envelope. And my public humiliation had just given her the perfect moment to deploy it. Since we are exchanging gifts, Erica announced, her voice slicing through the celebration with surgical precision, I have one as well. The room's energy shifted instantly. Guests who had been toasting Timothy and Judith now turned toward Erica, expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Mason, still basking in the glow of his successful orchestration, looked annoyed. Erica dear, Sharon began, her tone patronizing, how lovely that you want to participate. But I think we've had enough excitement for one evening. Oh, I disagree completely, Erica replied, her smile sharp as a blade. I think this evening is just getting started. She reached into her purse with deliberate slowness, withdrawing the envelope she'd protected all night. But instead of handing it to me, she walked directly to Mason's end of the table. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. She was challenging the patriarch directly, meeting power with power. This envelope contains information that I believe will interest you greatly, Erica said, holding the document just out of Mason's reach. Information about your daughter-in-law that might have influenced your decision-making tonight. Had you bothered to gather all the facts before proceeding with this performance? Mason's confidence faltered for the first time all evening. Young lady, I don't know what game you think you're playing. No game, Erica interrupted, her voice growing stronger. Just truth. Something that seems to be in short supply in this family. She placed the envelope on the table directly in front of Mason, her movements deliberate and controlled. Open it. The room held its collective breath. Mason reached for the envelope with hands that were no longer quite steady. His theatrical confidence was cracking, replaced by the first stirrings of uncertainty. He tore open the seal and withdrew the single sheet of paper. I watched his face as he read, witnessing a transformation both terrible and satisfying. The color drained from his cheeks as if someone had opened a valve and let all the blood run out. His triumphant smile dissolved like sugar in rain, replaced by an expression of dawning horror. What does it say? Sharon demanded, her voice sharp with anxiety as she watched her husband's face crumble. Mason's hands began to tremble, the paper rustling like autumn leaves in a windstorm. His eyes darted between the medical report and my tear-streaked face, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what he had just done. It's a pregnancy test, he whispered, the words barely audible above the suddenly oppressive silence. Catherine is pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. Not the expectant quiet of an audience, but the hollow silence of a tomb. Guests who had been celebrating moments before now stared in shock and growing horror as the implications began to sink in. Positive, Erica clarified, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned quiet. Confirmed by blood tests 48 hours ago. Catherine is carrying your grandchild, Mason. The heir you claim she could never provide. I found my voice then, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside myself I hadn't known existed. Through my tears and heartbreak, I summoned every ounce of dignity I had left and spoke with a clarity that surprised even me. Congratulations, I said, looking directly at Mason with eyes that no longer held submission or a desperate desire for his approval. You just gave away your grandchild. The power shift in the room was immediate and complete. Mason, who had commanded the evening, now looked like a man facing his own execution. The signed divorce papers that had represented his victory moments before now became evidence of his devastating miscalculation. Catherine, he stammered, his voice breaking. Catherine, we didn't know. We had no idea. Surely we can. Can what? I asked, my voice growing stronger. Can undo the papers I just signed in front of 45 witnesses? Can pretend this evening never happened? Can take back the humiliation you orchestrated for your own entertainment? Timothy finally found his voice, stepping forward, his hands outstretched in a gesture both pleading and pathetic. Catherine, please, we can work this out. The papers don't have to be filed. We can tear them up right now. Work what out, Timothy? I asked, the irony so sharp it was almost funny. Work out our marriage that you have already legally dissolved? Work out your relationship with Judith, who is wearing your grandmother's earrings and planning to move into our house. Judith, who had been standing beside Sharon like a trophy, now looked like she wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Her triumph had evaporated, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that she had participated in the destruction of a pregnant woman's marriage. This is all a misunderstanding, Sharon interjected, her voice rising with desperate pitch. An unfortunate timing issue. We can make this right. We can. You can what? Erica interrupted, her fury now fully unleashed. You can undo the legal documents? You can erase the public humiliation? You can magically transform the celebration back into what Catherine thought it was. Mason was openly begging now, his arrogance completely evaporated. Catherine, please. You must understand. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. You thought wrong, I said simply. You thought you could dispose of me like defective merchandise and replace me with a newer model. You thought you could orchestrate my humiliation for your entertainment. You thought you could destroy my life without consequences. The legal reality of the signed documents was sinking in around the room. Even if I wanted to forgive this betrayal, to attempt reconciliation, the divorce papers created a legal barrier that could not be simply wished away. The wheels of dissolution were already in motion, set in stone by signatures and witnesses. The papers are signed, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears still streaming down my face. The marriage is over, and your grandchild will never know the family that threw him away before he was even born. The celebration that had begun with such cruel joy was now awake, mourning the death of relationships and possibilities that could never be resurrected. The silence that followed my declaration stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Around the dining room table, 45 faces stared at me with expressions ranging from shock to pity to a dawning understanding of what they had just witnessed. But I was done being the object of their scrutiny, done being the victim of their entertainment. Erica appeared at my side as if summoned, her arm sliding through mine with protective determination. Come on, she whispered, gentle but firm. We're leaving. Catherine, please. Timothy called out as I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor, echoing through the sudden chaos. We can fix this. We can make this right. I turned to look at him one last time. This man who had shared my bed and my dreams and my morning coffee ritual. His face was pale with panic, his hands reaching toward me in a gesture that was 2 years too late. Fix what, Timothy? I asked, my voice steady despite the tears that continued to flow. Fix the legal documents I signed in front of everyone we know? Fix the humiliation you orchestrated? Fix the fact that you replaced me before you even divorced me? He had no answer for that. None of them did. Mason stumbled to his feet, his chair toppling backward. Catherine, you have to understand. We made a mistake. Terrible mistake. But we can correct this. The papers don't have to be filed. We can tear them up right now. And then what? I asked, my voice growing stronger. Pretend this evening never happened? Pretend you didn't just publicly humiliate me for the entertainment of our family and friends? Pretend Judith isn't standing there wearing your mother's jewelry and planning to move into my house. Sharon stepped forward, her face flushed with desperation. Catherine dear, you must be reasonable. Families have misunderstandings. This can all be worked out. Think about the baby. Think about what's best for your child. The audacity of her words stopped me cold. What's best for my child? I repeated slowly, is to never know the family that threw him away before he was even born. With Erica's steadying presence beside me, I walked toward the dining room exit, leaving behind the crystal and china and carefully arranged flowers that had once represented my hopes for acceptance and belonging. My steps were measured and deliberate, each one carrying me further away from the life I had thought I wanted. Catherine. Mason's voice cracked as he called after me. You cannot do this. You cannot take our grandchild away from us. I paused at the threshold, turning back one final time. I am not taking your grandchild away from you, I said clearly. You gave him away when you handed me those divorce papers. The arguing voices and desperate pleading followed us through the front hallway, growing fainter with each step toward the door. Guests, expecting to celebrate an anniversary, now witnessed the complete implosion of a family, their uncomfortable murmurs mixing with the increasingly frantic protests from Timothy and his parents. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing as Erica and I stepped onto the front porch. After the suffocating atmosphere of betrayal and cruelty inside, the October evening felt clean and purifying. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with air that didn't carry the weight of disappointment and judgment. Don't look back, Erica whispered, guiding me toward her car. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you hesitate. I kept my eyes fixed forward on the red taillights, on the porch lights of neighboring houses where other families were probably enjoying normal Tuesday evenings, free from drama or public humiliation. With each step away from that house, I felt something lifting from my shoulders. A weight I had carried for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. Behind us, the front door opened and Timothy's voice carried across the yard. Catherine, please don't do this. But I was already climbing into Erica's passenger seat, already closing the door on that chapter of my life with a firm click that felt more final than any divorce papers could. Erica started the engine and pulled away, her driving unusually slow and deliberate. In the safety of her car, surrounded by the familiar scent of her vanilla perfume and soft jazz music, I finally allowed myself to completely fall apart. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside me, the kind of crying that involves your entire body and leaves you gasping for breath between waves of grief. 2 years of marriage. 2 years of trying to earn approval that was never going to come. 2 years of believing I was building something permanent with someone who was secretly planning my replacement. Let it out, Erica said softly, squeezing my hand. Let it all out. You've been holding this in for months. She was right. I had been carrying the weight of a failing marriage, absorbing the criticism, making excuses for inexcusable behavior. The relief of finally releasing all that suppressed pain was almost as overwhelming as the pain itself. I can't believe they did that to you, Erica said, her voice shaking with fury. It was cruel beyond anything I could have imagined. Through my tears I managed to speak. You saved me, Erica. If you hadn't been there with those test results, you would have found another way, she replied firmly. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. Stronger than you gave yourself credit for. As we drove through our quiet suburban neighborhood, I began to feel something unexpected stirring alongside my grief. Pure, simple relief. The marriage that had been slowly suffocating me was over. The constant pressure to earn approval from people who would never accept me was finished. The pretense that we were building something beautiful together could finally be abandoned. Where do you want to go? Erica asked as we approached the intersection. Home, I said without hesitation. I want to go home. The house that Timothy and I had shared looked different as Erica pulled into the driveway. The porch light I'd left burning cast familiar shadows, but something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer the home I shared with my husband. This was simply my house, the place where I would raise my child and build whatever came next. Erica helped me carry my overnight bag inside, her presence filling the silence that had once felt oppressive, but now seemed peaceful. As I moved through rooms that contained 2 years of shared memories with Timothy, I realized the house no longer felt like a shrine to a failed marriage. It felt like the beginning of something entirely new. I should call my mother, I said, settling onto the couch where Timothy and I had once watched television. The familiar furniture looked different now, transformed by the knowledge that I would be the only adult making decisions within these walls. Erica nodded, squeezing my shoulder before heading to the kitchen. I'll make us some tea while you talk to her. Take your time. Despite the late hour, my mother answered on the second ring, immediately alert. Catherine, sweetheart, it's nearly midnight. Is everything all right? The question opened a floodgate. I told her everything. The phone bills, Judith, the cruel family dinners, and finally, the devastating anniversary party that had ended with divorce papers and pregnancy test results creating chaos in equal measure. Oh, my dear child, my mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined such calculated cruelty. Her validation felt like medicine for wounds I hadn't known how to treat. Mom, I'm pregnant. The baby they said I could never give them is growing inside me right now. The joy in her voice was immediate, uncomplicated. Catherine, that's wonderful news. You are going to be a magnificent mother. That child is so lucky to have you. Her enthusiasm stood in stark contrast to the conditional acceptance I'd grown accustomed to from Timothy's family. My mother's love for her future grandchild required no performance metrics, no biological proof of worthiness. It simply existed, pure and unconditional. I want to come stay with you for a while, she continued. Help you get settled, prepare for the baby. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about the future. I would love that, Mom. I really would. The months that followed my mother's arrival were unlike anything I had experienced during my marriage. Freed from the constant stress of trying to earn approval, my body responded to pregnancy with remarkable resilience. Dr. Patterson commented at each appointment how much healthier and more relaxed I appeared. Whatever changes you've made in your life, she said during my 5-month checkup, they are working beautifully. Your blood pressure is perfect. Your weight gain is exactly on track. And, honestly, you just look radiant. The pregnancy became a celebration rather than a source of anxiety. Erica organized a baby shower that filled my living room with genuine friends who offered support without conditions. My mother painted the nursery in soft yellow and green, creating a sanctuary that felt warm and welcoming, rather than pressured by expectations. When Timothy attempted to contact me, my lawyer made it clear the divorce proceedings would continue as planned, and he had no legal claim to involvement in my pregnancy. The signed papers from that devastating evening had created an ironclad barrier, protecting both me and my child from further interference. Labor began on a Tuesday morning in late spring, nearly 8 months after the anniversary party that had changed everything. Erica and my mother flanked my hospital bed, offering encouragement through each contraction. The delivery room filled with love and anticipation, but it was love freely given, not conditional on performance or biological success. When my son finally arrived, healthy, beautiful, and perfect, I felt a completeness that had never existed during my marriage. Holding him for the first time, I understood what unconditional love felt like. Not the desperate scrambling for approval, but simple, pure acceptance of another human being exactly as they were. He's gorgeous, Erica whispered, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the baby I had named David Erica Miller. Absolutely perfect. The middle name honored the friendship that had saved me during my darkest hour, ensuring my son would always carry a reminder of what true loyalty looked like. David would grow up knowing that the most important relationships in life were chosen rather than assigned by biology or marriage certificates. The hospital room filled with flowers and gifts from people who celebrated his arrival without reservation. My mother's church friends, Erica's co-workers, neighbors who had watched my marriage crumble, and wanted to support my new beginning. None of them questioned his worth based on bloodlines or family heritage. They simply welcomed a new life into the world with joy. Timothy and his family made no attempt to contact me after David's birth, apparently understanding that the bridge between us had been permanently burned. The legal documents that had once represented my humiliation now served as protection, ensuring my son would never be subjected to the conditional love and constant evaluation that had made my own life with them so miserable. As David grew from infant to toddler, our small house became a sanctuary of laughter, chaos, and unconditional acceptance. Erica served as his honorary aunt, spoiling him with attention and gifts while helping me navigate the challenges of single motherhood. My mother extended her visit indefinitely, claiming she had never been happier than when helping raise her grandson. The three women who had once been excluded from Timothy's family's vision of the future created something infinitely more valuable. A chosen family built on love rather than obligation, support rather than judgment, acceptance rather than performance metrics. Now, years later, I sit in my backyard garden, watching David chase butterflies with the fearless enthusiasm of a 4-year-old who has never known rejection. His laughter fills the air as he discovers new flowers and interesting insects, his world expanding with each day in an environment where curiosity is celebrated rather than controlled. The pain of betrayal has faded into something unexpected: gratitude. Timothy and his family's cruelty had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. They had forced me to discover my own strength, to build a support system based on genuine care rather than biological obligation, to raise my child without the toxic pressures that had nearly destroyed my own sense of worth. David knows nothing of the grandparents who rejected him before birth. He knows only the love of his mother, his chosen grandmother who reads him stories every night, and his honorary aunt who brings him new books and toys with delightful regularity. His foundation is built on acceptance rather than conditions, celebration rather than evaluation. The revenge I achieved was not calculated or vindictive. It was simply the natural consequence of living well, of choosing love over obligation, of raising a child who would never question his worth based on other people's approval. Timothy's family had wanted an heir to carry on their legacy. Instead, they had created the beginning of mine. A legacy built on kindness, acceptance, and the radical idea that love should never require additions. Watching David play in our garden, I realized that their cruelty had set me free to become the person I was always meant to be. The best revenge, as it turned out, was simply living well.